What's up, YouTube? Welcome in to another YouTube live show. I'm John Kurtz. We're here talking college football. We're going to talk some Big 12 football. We're going to talk some conference realignment. We've got all the bases covered here tonight because we have some updates from Pac-12 country. It's actually been a pretty eventful week, I would say, in Pac-12 country, with Dan Patrick saying on Twitter earlier this week that the Pac-12 would be adding San Diego State. I believe his words were like by the end of the week, which does not appear that that's going to happen. Also, Jon Wilner has definitely disputed that, and he is the most well-sourced reporter out there on the West Coast in Pac-12 country. So we can get into some of that here tonight. He did a pretty detailed mailbag where he broke down a lot of what's going on with Pac-12 expansion right now. So we got an update on a team that is neck and neck with San Diego State in terms of Wilner's thoughts on who is the favorite for Pac-12 expansion. So there may be two that would be added by the Pac-12. He also gave a timeline for when the Pac-12 media deal may wind up actually happening. And it was sooner than I thought. So it sounds like sooner rather than later, we might actually get Pac-12 media deal numbers coming out. Might not be approved by then totally by all the presidents and athletic directors, but I would imagine we start to see that trickle out sooner rather than later, at least according to what Jon Wilner had to say. And of course, there's always a line or two in those stories from Canzano and Wilner that'll make me laugh in terms of how it's presented, as I'm sure they would laugh at the way that I present some of the things here with a Big 12 slant, right? But all's fair in love, war, and conference realignment. That's what I've always said. So here we are. We can have some fun with that. Outside of that, we have a pretty big weekend of Big 12 football coming up. And I am frankly a little bit disappointed in the way that all this worked out. I know that the conference can't really control this, but the fact that TV has put the three best games of the week by far in the Big 12 on at the same time at night is very frustrating to me, especially when I'm a K-State fan and I'm going to be locked in and dialed in on K-State and Baylor and not so much thinking about what is going on in the other games as much as I want to. As much as I want to peek in on Kansas, Texas Tech, and TCU, Texas, I'm going to be really focused on K-State and Baylor. So that is a bummer, but those are three pretty darn good games. We've got quarterback questions abound in Kansas and Texas Tech and wondering who is going to play there. Some trouble for the Red Raiders. Kansas has a pretty good problem on their hands. We've got a Big 12 title game, elimination game between Baylor and K-State, in essence. Would not officially eliminate either team, but it would make it very difficult, extremely difficult to get in. They need a lot of help, the loser of that game, and the winner will march on with a pretty good shot. So that is certainly intriguing. And then obviously what's going down in Austin is a big game because College Game Day is there for the second time this year in Austin. And we'll have Texas and TCU, with TCU right on the heels of making it into the college football playoff ranking. So I've got to hand it to ESPN. As much as we may roll our eyes at them going to Austin again, it is them covering a Big 12 game, and it is looking pretty good right now with Texas having won 4 of 5 and TCU entering the college football playoff rankings this week. So they are certainly a topic of conversation with some of the chaos that happened in front of them in the playoff rankings. And that is a story, too. I mean, the fact that TCU made it without any real big issue, the fact that the Frogs are in now, and Tennessee, I thought for sure. Tennessee was going to wind up staying in front of them in the rankings, and that would really mess this whole thing up, but didn't happen so far. So we shall see where the Frogs go from here. But I think that the part of it that is a little bit silly is that we sit here and argue about it and talk about it. I mean, TCU was going to have to win out anyway, and Ohio State and Michigan were going to play each other at the end of the year. They're both in front of TCU. I mean, as long as TCU just kept winning games, they were going to be fine no matter what. But it is a sign of respect, and I think there were even other signs of respect to the Big 12 with the way that the rankings played out outside of TCU being in the top 4. So we've got that on the docket. All the games, I laid that out there. I appreciate you guys that are here. I know this is early, especially for a weeknight, so I'm anticipating that the crowd will probably be lighter tonight. We don't have a massive breaking news story, and I am getting this off the ground earlier. It's because I've got to go to a concert tonight in Lawrence, Kansas, of all places. But listen, Lawrence has a great music scene. I've been to many a concert in Lawrence, so happy to do so. Happy to pay a visit. Not too far down the road from Kansas City. So I got to get out of here a little bit early. I probably could have pushed the start time to 7. Maybe that would have helped a little bit with attendance. But hey, we're just gonna go. We're just gonna take off and go. get it in, and call it good from there. So you guys know you are a part of the show. You can certainly dictate the content of this live show tonight. You can make your voice heard with your question or comment. Simply donate by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you can donate and get on the live here tonight. It also is a way to support the work that I'm doing and bringing you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis. Could not do it without you guys. Could not do it without the support that you give me. So I sincerely appreciate it as always. Okay. That is it. Oh, like the video. That's the last thing. Like the video. That's one way you can help support the channel without spending a dime. Just one click, like the video, and that will help me out as well. So really appreciate that. R Webb, what's up, my man? R Webb in here first. He says, San Diego State and SMU, Georgie saved the pack. LOL, B Izzo. Yes, R Webb is aware of where we are going with this, and the latest mailbag. Well, no, and it wasn't a mailbag. It was a story from Jon Wilner. I apologize. It was a story from Jon Wilner, and that is where we will lead things off. The latest on Pac-12 expansion. The Big 12 obviously has flirted, I suppose you could say, flirted with San Diego State. I don't know how much has actually happened behind the scenes with Brett Yormark actually talking to San Diego State or whatever. But certainly in terms of this discussion, like these groups, Big 12 fans, we have kicked around the idea of San Diego State before. So there's been a little bit of that talk. And I think this got more hot and heavy this week in Pac-12 country because Dan Patrick, of all people, decided to weigh in and say that that San Diego State would be added by the end of the week to the Pac-12. This is how Jon Wilner begins his piece here. He says, contrary to a report Monday by media personality Dan Patrick, the Pac-12 is not offering membership to San Diego State this week. So do not expect San Diego State to be offered membership to the Pac-12 this week. Says any decision on expansion will be made after the media rights agreement is signed. In other words, the conference is weeks and perhaps months away from solidifying its future membership structure. While San Diego State makes sense on multiple levels, and as the Pac-12 expansion target mentioned most often, the hotline believes there is equally strong interest in adding SMU. So there you go. The hotline being Jon Wilner's column space here. He says the Mustangs meet the Pac-12's academic profile, have gobs of money, provide access to an untapped media market, and could enhance recruiting efforts in talent-rich Texas. If we were handicapping the expansion landscape, SMU would be a co-favorite with San Diego State. So that's a lot of love for SMU there. Now, that's not terribly surprising to me, especially because, I mean, we've heard SMU before. I just have not heard it in quite that strong of terms from Wilner to put them on the same level as San Diego State, because everybody assumes that San Diego State is going to be the team that gets added to the Pac-12 eventually. That would eventually be a piece of the puzzle for them. And rightfully so. I can understand why. But SMU makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider the reports last year. Remember the Fort Worth Star-Telegram? Matt Kingle had that column where he said TCU was actually pretty close to making their way to the Pac-12 last year when everything was happening with the Big 12. Houston is another school that's been mentioned multiple times with the Pac-12. Some reports, some speculation, but it always seems like the Pac-12 has had its eye on Texas. And that makes sense. Look, they are losing something in Southern California with USC and UCLA. No doubt about that. You're regaining a teeny tiny piece of it with San Diego State. It does make sense. Their athletics have been extremely competitive. I mean, they would be ready to step in and be competitive, no doubt, right away. But you're not exactly breaking a ton of new ground there in Pac-12 country. You're trying to replace some of what you're losing in SoCal, but you're not breaking a ton of new ground by doing that. So where can you break new ground? That's in the state of Texas. And that is, if you're trying to mine some talent, that's obviously a great place to do so. If you're going to lose a little bit of your juice in Southern California recruiting-wise without SC and UCLA in there, Texas is not a bad place to try and plant your flag. SMU has been relatively competitive here. They scored, 77 points this past weekend. They have plenty of money. And as was mentioned there, they certainly fit the academic profile that the Pac-12 would like. So it makes a ton of sense. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. But to go back to what R. Webb said, R. Webb's kind of mocking here San Diego State and SMU. being who's coming into the Pac-12. I mean, they are, to me, both clearly below the 4 schools that the Big 12 has added. So what the Pac-12 is doing here, we'll see what their media deal winds up being, how similar it is to the Big 12 or different. Is it going to be slightly more? I'd imagine it's going to be about the same. But when it comes to expansion candidates, I just don't think there's as much juice for the squeeze left there for the Pac-12 as there was with the Big 12. And I do think that's pretty obvious that both of these schools will be a step below. I mean, look, SMU is in the Big 12 footprint. Now, I get it. The Big 12 already has a little bit of DFW with TCU, but that's in the Big 12 footprint. If the Big 12, if they were one of the top 4 options, certainly that would have been considered by the Big 12, even if they already do have a bit of a foothold there. They're already in the state of Texas and they took Houston, right? So I think Houston is above them in the pecking order. And then San Diego State, to me is closer. I would still, if I'm looking at it from a Big 12 standpoint, certainly go San Diego State before I would SMU. But I don't think San Diego State is as good as BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, or UCF. So to me, it is pretty clear that these are kind of, people joked about the Big 12 becoming the AAC for a little bit there. I don't think people are joking quite as much anymore about that. But this is a little more along those lines. And the joke with the Pac-12 would be, Mountain West 2.0 or something. And that would have a little bit more the feel of that to me. But I understand the Pac-12 has a need for some inventory, I think, above all else, that they just need, with these TV networks and TV deals moving forward, just more games, more inventory available, especially if they're going to be spreading it out among multiple media partners, which is another part of the Wilner report that we'll get to coming up here. So anyway, interesting stuff. Doesn't shock me, doesn't surprise me, doesn't scare me, certainly. I think that's kind of the ultimate here. Like, are you scared by the Pac-12 adding those schools in terms of what it's going to mean for their long-term future? Does that have any effect on like Oregon and Washington decision-making, which is ultimately going to be the deal here? No, I don't think it really does. So much ado about nothing might be a little bit strong, but just kind of meh to that news. That doesn't really bother me much one way or the other. Grandan, I see Grandan popping in with a donation. Thank you, Grandan. Grandan says, if the Big 12 really wants games in the later time zones, which schools would fit best competitively and financially to complement BYU? I really just think that the only way that happens and the only way the Big 12 is going to go that route is if, under whatever circumstance, they wind up plucking some of the Pac-12 schools, some of the 4 corner schools, Arizona State, going down that road, Colorado, Utah. I don't see anybody, Boise is another school that's been like Boise, Fresno. They've been like fringe Pac-12 expansion candidates. I don't think any of that's really worth it to add. It would be, I'm sure in a way it would be great to have Utah for the Holy War rivalry to be in the Big 12 and travel partner and just a rivalry to complement BYU there. But I don't know that you're accomplishing a ton in terms of getting into any new markets or anything like that, even though Utah is a pretty proud and successful football program right now. So I just don't think that's really, I don't think that you would see that happen under really any circumstance other than the Pac-12 either imploding because of the Big Ten or your stability, your overall profile and package right now that you're trying to sell, that Yormark clearly is trying to sell to basically anybody who will listen. If that entices the 4 corner schools to go, which does not seem very likely right now, that would, to me, be the only way that you do that. Now, maybe Gonzaga is a part of this in basketball where, you can get some late night hoops games going. And Yormark obviously is flirting with that idea. We now know with reporting from Pete Thamel within the last week. So doesn't mean that they can't find ways to get creative, but there's not an obvious answer to me outside of poaching 4 corner schools there. What's up, Robert? Robert says, Mandel. Okay, so I've got another Stuart Mandel quote here, huh? Robert says, Mandel, the Big 12 by any metric is a stronger conference top to bottom than the Pac-12 this season. Sagarin has it even higher than either SEC division. Conference is so deep that all 10 teams could still be bowl eligible. All right, so, man, Stuart Mandel really coming around, huh? It seems like the last couple times I've heard you guys quoting Mandel, it's been pretty positive about the Big 12. So I'm here for that. Stuart Mandel. Hey, I will give the guy credit. He at least somewhat repented for the way he treated the Big 12 circa July 2021, the last we heard of him speaking of the Big 12. And he has, I mean, even what I've seen from his tweets, he's been pretty open about the Big 12's success this year, seems interested in it, as most everybody is across the country. And we continue to see that with TV ratings that have come out. In fact, I didn't actually look. Let me go check the good old Gambling Gauchos. Did they put out the TV ratings this week? I'm not sure that I've seen that. One of the few weeks I haven't. Anyway, if someone has them, let me know. I'll try and find some time to look that up. People starting to file into the chat here. Let me remind you, if you want to donate and get your question or comment here on the chat, click the $ below the chat box where it says "Say Something." That is how you do that. Sorry that I got off a little bit early today. I have to leave early for a concert tonight. So thank you for appeasing me on that front. And if you could like the video, I would appreciate that as well. Totally free. Just takes one click. Michael, thank you for the donation, my friend. Michael says, how much of the pack leaking San Diego State is to try to get the Big 12 to take San Diego State and water itself down in order to protect the Pac-12 from extinction? I love a good conspiracy theory here. I love a good theory about, and maybe conspiracy theory is even too strong there. I love a good theory about what mechanisms might be working behind the scenes here in conference realignment as everybody tries to outmaneuver everybody else. I don't even know that it's the Pac-12. I'd be very interested to know who's leaking to Dan Patrick. I'd be very interested to know if that is coming from like the TV side of things, because obviously with his background, I wonder somewhat about that. That it would be somebody pushing there. But you are certainly correct in wondering, all right, when we see reports like this, what is the motivation behind this? Who's got a motive in all of this? Like, for instance, I'm still pretty convinced, Brett Yormark or somebody close to him is doing a damn good job of getting Pete Thamel to throw out well-timed stories that are grenades, as our good old friend George Kliavkov would say, grenades coming at the Pac-12 from Big 12 country, which would be, hey, Gonzaga. The Pac-12 has met with them, been really quiet about it. Now the Big 12 is here, thundering in with a big news story from the worldwide leader, and everybody's going to be talking about it, talking about the Big 12, talking about the Big 12 and Gonzaga and how that would fit, and stealing some of the spotlight there. Before that, of course, it was the story about the Pac-12 and the Big 12 leadership meeting, and the Big 12, according to Pete Thamel, saying, thanks, but no thanks. We don't need any kind of alliance here between the two leagues, which the Pac-12 still to this day seems to be very mad about, because we still see Wilner and Canzano both push that they're still upset with that and that it's not true. And either way, seems like they were outmaneuvered and outmarketed in that instance by Brett Yormark in the Big 12. So everybody does have a motive when these things happen. That is very true. That is very true. I see Rich says Stewart has been all mea culpa lately. Yeah. Yes, he certainly has. Glenn, what's up, Glenn? Glenn, thank you for the donation, my friend. Thank you for being here. Glenn says, congratulations to BYU for beating Boise State. Who will beat BYU's rival in the Big 12? It's a great question. And yes, congratulations. We gave plenty of congrats around to BYU for beating Boise State last week, or on Sunday. I guess technically you could call that last week, but on Sunday during that live show. Really nice win. Tough place to play, even if it's not a quintessential Boise team. But who will be BYU's rival in the Big 12? I mean, so the first thing that jumps to mind is Baylor. But that's because there's been this series going on right now. I mean, I feel like it's kind of low-hanging fruit, like easy pickings to say Baylor because they played each other here recently. But the part about that is there's just so much respect there between the two. Like, I've seen nothing but just respect and glowing praise for each program. And generally, you think of a rivalry like some bad blood developing along the way. I feel like some of that might be hard with BYU. I know the Holy War is really nasty. I know the Holy War absolutely is. In fact, I saw Jon Wilner responding to a mailbag question about it was like, what rivalry in the Pac-12 can come close to Arizona State, I think is what it was. And he said Arizona State is the only thing that comes close to the Holy War in terms of like a rivalry in that geographic footprint. So I know there's a lot of respect for how much hatred is involved there in the Holy War. But BYU feels so damn nice. I mean, I see him giving out ice cream in the stands to Arkansas fans when they were there for that game earlier this year. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's hard for me to see bad blood developing there. BYU fans might need to help me out a little bit. One interesting one here, and I see Timothy weighs in with this. TCU weighs in and says, Central Florida, UCF, BYU, I feel like just culturally, the way the fan bases act on social media, at least what I've seen on Twitter, seems very different, right? Like UCF, young, brash, BYU, old, established, and I don't mean old like as an insult, but a program that's been around for a long time with a bunch of tradition. UCF is the new kid on the block that wasn't even playing D1 football until it was like the 90s, right? I believe the mid to late 90s. And a young alumni base that is very brash, not afraid at all to really mix it up on Twitter. BYU, very, very nice, respectful, more old guard. I mean, so that does seem to be a mix that could, be like some oil and water together when the games actually start happening. So that's an intriguing one. I kind of like that. I see Michael also says angry rival TCU, friendly rival Baylor. Maybe so. I mean, TCU has a little bit of that going on. I mean, you guys have heard me complain about the TCU student section for weeks now. I don't know how much of that really permeates the fan base. I don't know. That one doesn't really stick and land with me as much as UCF. I think Baylor definitely like the friendly rival. I like UCF. I'm gonna take UCF. That was a really good call there. I see Cal Knight says 1996. Okay, 1996. There we go. So I was generally correct there. I'm sorry, I'm still trying to find these TV numbers from Gambling Gauchos today. Anyway, okay. If you guys want to donate and make your voice heard, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you do so. It will get your question or comment in on the live show tonight. I've got until about 7:30, I would say. Okay, our web says BYU. Thank you, our web, for the donation. It says BYU and TCU have bad history from their Mountain West days. Okay. Yeah, Michael, BYU and TCU had bad blood in the Mountain West Conference. There you go. This is why I need you guys. And honestly, why I love the community, and I love that we have fans from the 4 incoming schools here, so I can learn things like this, because I just did not know that. Did not know that at all, and that is very helpful. Okay, so TCU BYU, I'll be on the lookout for that one to see if they're gonna mix things up when that comes into play here in the Big 12. So thank you. Sports Media Watch has Week 10 TV ratings. Okay, Sports Media Watch. I'll see if I can get that pulled up here at some point. All right, if you want a little bit more from Wilner here, we talked about obviously SMU being the co-favorite according to him in Pac-12 expansion, but that it would not happen until after the Pac-12 media deal is finalized. So when is the Pac-12 media deal going to be finalized? Well, we got some news on that in this latest piece from Jon Wilner as well. Wilner says Kliavkov is expected to present a media deal to the presidents for approval within the next month, according to sources familiar with the situation. So within the next month, that is quicker than I thought. I mean, but a part of this is just we really have no idea what's going on with the Pac-12 because it has moved so slow and so quietly in all of this. Much more quietly. I meant to say quietly there more than the slow. I guess it's slow relative to the Big 12 coming lightning fast and usurping them in front of the line. But the Pac-12 has just done so much of this in silence. And I know, we talked a lot about like Jay-Z quotes with Brett Yormark, right? I don't know who to attribute this quote to. Maybe it was a Lil Wayne, real G's move in silence. Real G's move in silence. We'll see if that's going to be the case for George Kliavkov, but it hasn't been total silence. And the thing that would give me pause on that front, if I were the Pac-12, is that when Kliavkov has talked, it's been kind of whiny and defiant and defiant to the point of throwing out ridiculous talking points like UCLA would actually make more money by staying in the Pac-12, or that the Pac-12 is going to catch the SEC and Big Ten financially at some point, right? They've been like ridiculous kind of kicking and screaming, childish sort of things that have come when we have gotten comments from George Kliavkov. So that would not make me feel very confident ultimately if I were Pac-12 fans. But to his credit, on one hand, he's done a good job of keeping this pretty coy in terms of what's going on, even as the Big 12 now has come out and thundered around and announced their new TV deal. More from the article. It says, essentially, the process will gain speed once the UC regents meet next week. Completing any agreement without knowing UCLA's fate would be foolish. Okay, so again, November 17th is that regents meeting that's going to be about UCLA, where we will find out for sure, supposedly, for sure, once and for all, whether or not there will be any hang up in UCLA going to the Big Ten. Wilner and everybody continue to say that is not a likely thing to happen, but it is still possible. It is still possible until that meeting and we get word from them that it is not going to happen. It says final approval might not be quick and clean given the differing long haul goals for the various universities, but ultimately an agreement, the 10 schools moving forward together is the most likely outcome. So yeah, the news bit of that is the timing there. That a guy who is incredibly well sourced. I mean, say what you will about Wilner. Yes, I do think there is some Pac-12 slant to what he typically puts out there. He's clearly in tight with everybody at the Pac-12 more so than any reporter out there. So I would deem that to be pretty legitimate in terms of the timeline here. I definitely would put a lot of trust in that in terms of what the timeline is going to be for the Pac-12. Now, can things change? Yes, things can change. But as of right now, I would seem to believe that is pretty accurate. Says in terms of the money, and this is nothing real new, but it says the $30-something million question is how closely the Pac-12's media contract will compare to the Big 12's deal and how far it will be from matching the Big 10's agreement, which is believed to be worth $1 billion annually or just over $62 million per school. If the Pac-12 contract falls short of the Big 12 deal, it won't be by much. Here's the challenge. The Big 12 took a below market price when it decided to renew early with ESPN and Fox, thereby lowering the valuation floor and potentially limiting the Pac-12's upside. We believe there are three outcomes for Pac-12 schools on the revenue front. One, approaching the Big 12, 29 to 31 million per year. Two, slightly surpassing the Big 12, 32 million to 35 million per year. Or three, easily exceeding the Big 12, 36 million to 40 million per school per year. Says, note those estimates assume UCLA does not return, of course. The other essential component for the Pac-12 is exposure. A decade ago, the conference chased the money from ESPN and Fox at the expense of exposure, and the athletic directors whose advice was ignored have been stewing about it for years. Our best guess is Kliavkoff aims for a mixture of revenue and visibility and crafts a three-pronged agreement with ESPN, Fox, and Amazon. Also, don't discount Apple being involved in some form or fashion. So the newsworthy part about that to me is that Fox gets included there because it seemed like even Canzano had been pushing for a while that it seemed like Fox was out after the Big 12's deal where Fox got a big chunk of Big 12 inventory. There's a lot of talk about that them being out at this point on the Pac-12's media deal. So that surprised me. That definitely surprised me to see Fox slipped in there. Apple, we've heard about. Amazon has definitely been the dominating force lately in terms of a non-traditional like streaming partner for Pac-12 games. We have heard much more about Amazon than Apple, but maybe it is. I mean, these are times where you got to get creative. So if it is going to be some combination of 3 or 4 entities there, would not totally shock me, would not totally surprise me if that were to happen. Part of this that I thought was quite funny was, okay, so there is a paragraph about the Big 12 threat and the Big 10 threat, right? Talking about each of those leagues and the threat they pose to the Pac-12. And this is where I said a lot of this really newsworthy, good stuff. Wilner is a very good, dogged reporter. I definitely respect him on that front. But there is always a little bit of slant, and there's always feels like a comment or two when I'm reading him or Canzano Canzano, it's much more. But there's always a line or two that'll make me laugh. And one of them did here in the Big 12 part. He's talking about the Big 12 threat. Says this has always been a secondary issue for the Pac-12. I mean, I'm fine with him saying that, even if I believe that it's at least a little more on the table there. But he ends it by saying the Big 12 left money on the table by renewing its partnerships with ESPN and Fox rather than going to the open market in 2024. But the move was based on a desire for security, binding the 8 continuing members and keeping the 4 newcomers out of play in case the Pac-12 developed a wandering eye. So the move was based on a desire for security. Okay, fine. Binding the 8 together and keeping the 4 newcomers out of play. Right. If, you're thinking about Big 10, ACC, Pac-12, whatever, Big 10, ACC, SEC, but not the Pac-12. That's the line that makes me laugh. And I've not nailed the dismount on all this, but the parentheses in case the Pac-12 developed a wandering eye to suggest that the Big 12 did that TV deal early because they were worried about Big 12 schools jumping to the Pac-12 is just simply ludicrous. I mean, what did we open the show talking about here? We opened it talking about SMU and San Diego State. Those are your expansion options. If those are your expansion options, you do not stand a chance to grab any of the Big 12 schools that are out there. They are certainly much better, much higher up the list. How about TCU, right? That school that's been mentioned as flirting with the Pac-12 before. Would you rather have TCU or SMU right now? TCU is fourth in the college football playoff rankings. Like, that's a ludicrous statement. That is very much, that to me is where we're like, all right. I mean, that's some propaganda. There was never a threat of that. Pac-12 country can say, there's never a real threat of the four corner schools leaving. All right, there's a better chance of that based on the instability and everything that was going on this summer with the Pac-12, and still is, by the way. There was a better chance of that than the league that is stable and is together and now has a new TV deal than any of those schools leaving right now for the Big 12, a year removed from all the craziness of July 2021 and what happened with Oklahoma and Texas leaving. So that part did definitely make me giggle reading that. All right, I see some donations here that I need to get to. If you want to donate and get your question or comment heard on the show tonight, click the $sign below the chat box where it says say something. And that is how you do that. Also, if you could like the video, I'd appreciate that. Totally free. Just one click helps me with the YouTube algorithm. That's an easy way to support the channel as well. That is totally free. And you guys that do donate, really appreciate it. It helps me bring you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis. So that is much, much appreciated here and helps this community. I see, who was it? Clint says John has no idea what's new. Well, look, I just read in the Wilner story, okay, and Wilner very much emphasized that SMU was a co-favorite for Pac-12 expansion along with San Diego State. I had not seen it expressed that strongly. So, made you click, Clint. Made you click. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Daniel says, what is your take on Stanford's prez during a faculty meeting saying that things will be changing in athletics? It was a rather cryptic message he sent out. I don't know. I didn't know that until right now. So Stanford's president during a faculty meeting says that things will be changing in athletics. Is that supposed to be Stanford athletics or just like athletics in general? Stanford, things will be changing in athletics. Because I feel like that could that could be a lot of different things. If we're talking about Stanford, like if it's just Stanford athletics, that could be like a Stanford athletics are going to change. We're not going to try and keep up with the Joneses as much. We're not going to be as competitive. I mean, they already are pretty much going down that road with keeping David Shaw employed now. And I mean, I understand it's not totally Shaw's fault. He can't use the portal the way everybody else is right now because of the academic standards at Stanford. Completely understand that. Maybe there's an element of that to it too, that Stanford eventually just long-term is looking at this like, yeah, this ain't us. We're not about this. We're definitely not about the portal life. Not really about this NIL life. That's just my initial reaction here without reading anything. And I mean, I Googled it. I see an article from like the Stanford student paper there. It's just, it would not be great for me to try and sit here and read it the whole time. So I apologize that I was not prepared or had not seen that before and don't have like a better answer for you. But if the implication here is like, do I wonder if that means that there's something like imminent with Stanford in the Big Ten? I don't think that there is. Wilner dedicated some time in his latest piece to dispelling more of that too, basically saying it's like the TV networks don't have the extra cash to throw around now for extra schools to be added to the Big Ten. The league doesn't really have the appetite to just destroy the Pac-12 as of right now. There's not going to be enough support there to do it. There is another piece of that too that I'm forgetting right now, and it makes sense. I think that makes sense that the Big Ten for right now would be chill on that a little bit. So I would wonder more if that has to do with like what Stanford's future is going to be in just like a little looking in the mirror. If you're Stanford here and wondering where your place is going to be in college athletics as things continue to just be dominated by the dollar and moving in a totally different direction than they were before. Jim, what's up, Jim? Jim says Big 12 media deal has a pro rata clause for expansion, but for Power 5 schools only. In 2021, the Power 5 four corners had a 2.436 million viewers, while Army, Navy, Boise State, Tulane had 2.694 million viewers. Okay, so comparing the viewership numbers here between the four corner schools to Army, Navy, Boise State, and Tulane from the group of five. Well, look, again, I have not. This is a tough one. This is a tough one for me, Jim, and I'm gonna treat this as respectfully as I can. But it's a tough one for me when I I'm not seeing the numbers you're referring to. I don't have that like in front of me. I don't know what you've had it up there. I mean, so 2.436 million viewers, and you're listing the four corner schools together. Is that like on a per game basis? Is that their high watermark for a game? Because 2.436 is that's not going to be the cumulative total for all the games that they've played together. So I'm just lacking a lot of context here. I'm lacking where those numbers are actually at. There are also, I would just remind you, like whenever we've discussed TV viewership here, there are a lot of things to keep in mind. Time slot not created equal, network not created equal, your competition obviously within the time slot not created equal in terms of what the viewership is going to be and how it's going to draw. You know, I mean, like Sam Bradshaw from Sikkim 365, he was the guy to go. He was the guy to go after Stuart Mandel with that in the first place, and that infamous TV numbers piece that we've referenced already here in the live chat tonight, with the actual context there. What was the competition in the other time windows, and what networks were they on? So some of this could be, I mean, look, if we're talking about the Pac-12 has had a definite distribution and exposure problem, again, that we referenced already and Wilner referenced. And a lot of that was the Pac-12 network and having games stuck on the Pac-12 network that no one's watching. So if you're comparing like that versus, you know, I mean, the AAC they've got ESPN exposure. I mean, they've been on ESPN. So if we're comparing like AAC games that are on ESPN to Pac-12 games that are on the Pac-12 network, it's just there's so much of that would have to be sorted out. I apologize that I can't really totally do it with just what I have there in those numbers. Do I think that Army, Navy, Boise, and Tulane would be a bigger draw TV-wise nationally than Utah, Colorado, Arizona State if they were to come to the Big 12? No, not at all. I don't. I mean, you could show me whatever numbers that you want to put in front of me, but I'm not saying that the four corner schools are like world beaters in terms of who is watching them. I mean, because as weird as it is, outside of Oregon and Washington, like the school that seemingly pops up the most on high TV viewership ratings, and I imagine a lot of it is because they were on Pac-12 After Dark so much, is Washington State. It is the four corner schools are not massive TV draws. I mean, who's lining up to watch Colorado football right now? So I'm not making that case. But as a whole, I do think it would be foolish to suggest that Tulane, Boise State, Navy, and Army actually draw more viewers. And if it is some kind of average there, I mean, keep this in mind with Army, Navy. They play that standalone game at the end of the year when there's nothing else going on CBS, on a major network. So you're going to get a ton of viewership there that's going to skew some of your data. So anyway, just some thoughts there. Just some thoughts, Jim, without being able to totally dissect that. But I do still think it's, to me, pretty obvious that you would be doing better financially if you're adding the four corner schools as opposed to those, and you would be doing better from a viewership standpoint. Like the TV networks, I think if you ask the TV networks what they would prefer the Big 12 do, I still think that's a pretty obvious answer there. I mean, I know what my answer would be, and again, I'm not, you know, I mean, you guys would look and say like, oh, huge Pac-12 hater here. Actually, like, I love Pac-12 After Dark. I love having that extra Power 5 football game to watch at the end of the night. I mean, I'm definitely going to go watch the four corner schools before I would watch anybody on that list not named Tulane, because Tulane is my squad this year, man. Tulane is my squad. Top 20 loss for the Cats. I'm rocking with Tulane this year. Ride or die for Tulane. Provo Cougar fan. What's up, Provo Cougar fan? Thank you for the support. Provo Cougar fan says, Pacific forfeits A-League volleyball game this week in Provo because of Duke's fake racist attack. Rivalry. BYU really only dislikes UT. Horns down. Yeah, I mean, look, I'll be honest. This is another like story I just have not really kept up on. I don't feel real comfortable speaking about it because I have not followed everything that has transpired from that story. But it is interesting that you bring up Texas. The problem with that is that the rivalry is only going to last for 2 years. And most everything seems to be pointing now towards Texas actually spending 2 years with BYU in the conference. But at most, I think you're only going to get 2 cracks at them. And then they're going to be off. And I mean, they're talking about not even wanting to play Texas Tech in the non-con. They're going to have this busy SEC schedule to deal with. So probably not getting on that schedule consistently enough to be a rival there. But I do love that you're bringing the Horns hate. I definitely do love that. BYU really only dislikes Texas. Horns down. You've been well trained. You clearly watched the channel here. You're going to know how to act when you come in as a member of the Big 12 conference with all of that. So I appreciate that, Provo Cougar fan. You seem to be a quick study and somebody who's going to thrive here in this new Big 12. That's just keep flashing that horns down. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. You'll be just fine. Robert, what's up, Robert? Robert says, so Dennis Dodd. Okay. Dennis Dodd says, by cutting in line, the Big 12 gets access to broadcast windows already uh, chocked with premium Big 10 and SEC content. Whether Pac 12 makes more than the Big 12 isn't the issue. It's become less about dollars and more about visibility. I like that. And I mean, that's a point that I've made plenty here. And I think that's probably where we are headed in terms of where the next iteration of Big 12 v Pac 12 goes. It's going to be about that, where I would imagine the Pac 12 is going to get a deal that is either the same or slightly above money wise what the Big 12 gets. And that will be the talking point that is thundered from the mountains of the Pac 12 propaganda machine. It will be spraying propaganda across the West Coast, trying to make it out to the rest of the country. But I don't know that the machine can actually fire it that far. They'll try to spread that word high and wide, but the real telltale sign is going to be like, will anybody be watching? Will people actually turn on Amazon Prime or Amazon Video, whatever, to watch it? That'll be the question. And I would still take my chances in the next 6 years or so when this deal is going to be going for the Big 12 TV deal. I would still take my chances that the Big 12 TV deal is going to be in that time span, that you're going to be in much better hands being on ESPN and Fox than you are Amazon Prime. That it might be like a cycle too early to go all in or close to it with the streaming services, but the Pac-12 doesn't really have that opportunity now. Dennis Dodd is also somebody that has been more bullish, I think, on the Big 12, and some of that, like, he's based out of Kansas City, I do believe. So he's much more regionally tied here and would have more of an inclination if you're going to insinuate that people have a little bit more bias or just being more open to the Big 12. He is definitely in that window. And I feel like that's come through with much of his writing throughout this whole conference realignment process, at least as it regards the Big 12 versus the Pac-12. I mean, he was probably in the same sort of boat everybody was when Texas and Oklahoma left. But yeah, I agree with him on that. I do agree with him on that. And I'm already just kind of preparing myself for the onslaught of like, oh my goodness, the Pac-12 is going to get $33 million per school per year. And wow, what a massive success. But Wilner pointed out in that article I read to you earlier that there are still Pac-12 ADs that are pissed about the fact that they chased money as opposed to exposure last time around in their TV contract. So that is absolutely something to consider. Absolutely something to consider. Zach, what's up, Zach? Zach says, my obligatory Cincinnati post, please send good vibes towards historic Nippert Stadium on Friday. The ECU game needs to be the start of a Bearcat comeback. Ooh, that's a Friday game. Thank you for telling me that, Zach. I didn't realize that game was on Friday, and I will be excited to watch that. I like me some standalone Friday college football that has like a rooting interest for me. And something that I can follow there. And that should be a pretty good game because ECU's been a salty squad this year. I do have some love for ECU. Told you guys there. I've been there. Had a buddy that used to do radio in Greenville, North Carolina. What does the old FPI says? FPI says basically a 2/3 shot since he wins this game. Since he's 7-2, East Carolina 6-3. Since he's still they're right in this thing. They got Tulane last game of the year. So, I guess if you're Cincy, you're rooting for Tulane to knock off UCF, and then you're going to want to go take care of business yourself. So, hey, keep your head up, Zach. I think Cincy's still right in this. I don't even know. Big Bearcat comeback. That seems even a little unfair to me. I mean, they just lost the one game, right, to UCF. Beat East Carolina, probably going to take care of Temple after that, and then it would set up a massive game at the end of the year against 17th ranked Tulane. So, sending all the good vibes, my friend. I'll tune in, I'll watch. Definitely will be pulling for the Bearcats on that. Excited to have a chance to see some of that. McMuffin. Oh, where'd McMuffin go? There it is. What's up, McMuffin? Welcome in. Thank you for the support, my friend. McMuffin says, Blackout McLean, sick K-State. You're still an awesome guy, though, John. Sick him. Hey, I appreciate that, McMuffin. I saw Baylor today from the official football account on Twitter putting out there that it was going to be a blackout. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I don't love that. I'm like, okay, you're playing this road. I'd much rather be playing this road game at 11 a.m., sleepy crowd, not like fired up night game, blackout, all these extra incentives for people to be there and be fired up. So, yeah, I don't love that. But, Baylor K-State, I think, is an incredibly intriguing game. I don't know how many people are going to watch it. because it'll be on opposite Texas and TCU. And then even if you're a Kansas or a Texas Tech fan, you're going to be watching KU Texas Tech at the same time. But what you have is a Big 12 championship elimination game, basically. Baylor, K-State would not be totally out of it with 3 conference losses, but they would need a ton of help at that point. And look, I mean, K-State's really struggled with Baylor. I mean, I'm not going to lie, McMuffin, like the name Baylor, and especially K-State going to Waco, does not make me feel real confident in general. K-State's 2 for their last 10 against Baylor, and they've lost 4 straight. Haven't won since 2017. So it's been a rough go of it. Chris Kleiman has not beaten Baylor under a couple of different head coaches, including losing in 2020 to that 2-win team when Aranda just took over and didn't have an offseason and all of that. But I will say the thing that gives me a little bit of hope here is that Baylor has not played any of the top 3 teams in the conference. So some of their numbers that you look at might be slightly inflated by having just the way the schedule broke, not played quite as much of the real meat of the conference. K-State, for instance, has already played TCU and Texas so far this year. That gives me a little bit of hope. I just think the matchup for K-State is a little bit better than it was against Texas. I still very much respect Baylor. Remind you, my Big 12 championship pick at the beginning of the year. I've kind of got a man crush on Dave Aranda, especially after I was watching his press conference earlier this week to see what he was saying about K-State. And man, the guy is just so Zen-like. I just wish I could channel the Zen that Dave Aranda has. So very, very well thought out in terms of his answers. Just seems like a very wise individual. I want the wisdom of Dave Aranda. I love the guy. I love the guy. So there's a lot that I really like there, and obviously concerns me about the matchup. But I do feel better about it than going up against Bijan Robinson with what had been a kind of beleaguered K-State linebacking core injury-wise. That did not seem appealing to me at all. I did not feel good about a K-State win. I'm not saying that I feel great about a K-State win here, but I would anticipate it's going to be a rock fight and a really close game, and not one where K-State falls behind 31-10, like what happened against Texas. I think it'll be different than that. But I would encourage everybody to watch that game if you can. If you can, I think that'll be a really good one. I think that'll be a really fun one. That's my thought in a nutshell right now on K-State Baylor. Noel, appreciate it. Check it in. No, I get this confused. Noel or Noel? What would be I'm going to say Noel, but Noel says, love the show. Keep up the great work. Sikkim. Thank you. And I apologize if I'm botching your name right now. Very much apologize if that is the case. But I appreciate that you guys, Baylor fans, show some love here on the channel. You guys know I got love for you. I got love for the Sikkim dudes that do a great job on their channel as well. And very much for the Big 12, help promote the Big 12 as well. I think it's a really good thing for the league that we've got all of that going. So I'm looking forward to it. Not Noel. Okay, so Noel, there we go. Thank you. Noel, thank you for the donation. Thank you for the support. I see Jeremy says Seminole. Yes, Seminole. All right, Noel. Shout out to the Seminoles, 45-3 over Miami this past week. Okay, so do we want to talk TCU in the college football playoff here? We've done a lot of the realignment talk, Pac-12 expansion talk so far here. I've got about 10 more minutes that I can spend with you. So let me throw that out as a disclaimer. It's about the 10-minute warning. If you've got something on your mind that you want to make sure makes it into the chat tonight, now is the time to do it. Don't hesitate. Click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. It's how you donate. It'll stick it up at the top for me, supersede everything else in the chat. Make sure that I see it because I can't monitor everything going on here. Also, it's a way to support the channel, support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content week in, week out. Also, if you could like the video, I'd appreciate that as well. It just takes one click, and that helps me out with the YouTube algorithm also. So your college football playoff rankings: number 1, Georgia; number 2, Ohio State; number 3, Michigan; number 4, TCU; Tennessee 5, Oregon 6, LSU up to 7 after the win over Bama; USC 8, Bama 9, Clemson 10. Other Big 12 schools: Texas at 18, K-State at 19, which was a nice, pleasant surprise for your boy here. I see K-State still hanging on there at 19 in the college football playoff rankings. I thought for sure we were going to see Tennessee stick in front of TCU, even after getting pretty thoroughly dominated by Georgia on Saturday. I thought for sure we would see that. I thought for sure it would be the committee. Well, they have this win over Alabama, and we heard all week last week about TCU and falling behind and the things that the committee didn't like. And then what did TCU do again? They were behind in the fourth quarter to Texas Tech before ripping off 3 straight touchdowns and kind of running away with it at the end. But it was not exactly a performance that I would think would have the committee being like, oh, forget the falling behind thing. If that truly were an issue, I mean, all that does is just underscore like how stupid of an exercise this is, honestly, to have the committee doing this every week and to have a committee of people with these sort of biases, like picking these teams. But that's a whole conversation for a different day. Pleasantly surprised TCU wound up number 4. However, I would throw this out there, right? I will float this theory. Had Alabama not lost to LSU, are we still sitting here talking about TCU being number 4? I am interested to know that if I am interested to know what would have happened had Bama won that game. If it then becomes, well, Tennessee did beat Bama, and look, Bama is still way up here with just the one loss. I seriously wonder about that because we've seen the committee. I mean, it seems like they will do things to try and set up. They had Texas barely in the top 25 last week, seemingly to be able to say, well, Bama has a win on the road at a college football playoff top 25 team. And we see that stuff all the time where it feels like Bama opponents or whoever they want to hype up will get a little bit of an extra edge. So I, don't totally trust them. Don't totally trust them. And that is why I would raise that concern as to what would have happened. But good thing LSU won, Bama lost. Don't have to worry about that. TCU at number 4. And honestly, as I said earlier, does not really change what is going to have to happen for TCU to make the playoff. I don't think I would imagine that to a man, no TCU fan or Big 12 fan would feel great about their chances losing in November, not only losing a game, but losing in November and having a chance to make the playoff. You can look at like Oregon making the climb up that they've climbed all the way back up to number 6. So they're in contention here, but it's taken them a long time to erase the sins of the Georgia loss. If TCU had done that early in the year, might be a chance of it. But now this late, losing in November, I think it's too crowded up there near the top. Too much that they would be fighting against. We've already seen the committee with a penchant to treat them poorly with what happened last week. I would not feel good about them trying to come back into the picture with one loss. I mean, I guess if you're going to create a best case scenario, then if TCU is going to lose a game, you'd want to lose it this weekend, lose it close, and lose it to Texas that everybody is in love with. And we were talking about, hey, can they make the playoff with 2 losses before they blew that game at Oklahoma State? That would, I suppose, be the time to do it. If you're going to lose right now, get it out of the way, then beat everybody else on the schedule. Maybe you get a rematch with Texas in the Big 12 title game. Go take care of business there, and maybe if there's some chaos, you could crawl back into it. But I would not feel very confident about that at all. TCU does have a couple of nice wins. Texas and K-State, both 18 and 19 there. They haven't beaten Texas yet. They could have a couple of nice top 20 wins after this week if they get Texas, which would make it 18 and 19 that they've beaten there. I will say, impressed with the committee for the respect that they showed K-State. There are only 3 teams in the top 20 that have 3 losses: Texas, Notre Dame, and K-State. Now, as I would tell you, 3 titans of college football, 3 blue blood brands, right? You can't argue with me there. The 3 blue bloods of college football: Texas, Notre Dame, and K-State, just hanging out as 3 lost teams in the top 20. But in all seriousness, that is pretty shocking to me. Now, I think K-State is worthy of that respect. I was a little butthurt that K-State fell all the way to 22 and 23 in the AP poll and the coaches poll. That felt a couple spots too low to me for a close loss to Texas, but I can understand it. Happy to have the respect from the College Football Playoff Selection Committee there, though. Thank you. And maybe it doesn't hurt that good old Gene Taylor, K-State's athletic director, is on the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. But we know that they're going to love Texas. We know that they're going to love up Texas. And I'm fine with them being at 18, a spot in front of K-State. That's fine. But seemingly a lot of respect for the league there with this week anyway, with TCU bumping into the top 4 and then Texas and K-State at 18 and 19. As far as it goes with the game, I mean, I am a bit stunned that Texas is a 7-point favorite, a full touchdown favorite. I'm not saying that would I make Texas the favorite in this game? Yes, a lot of things do feel to me like Texas probably should be the favorite there. They're hot, having won 4 or 5. TCU, I continue to have the feeling like, right, it's going to come crashing down at some point, right? They keep digging themselves these holes and being able to climb back out of it and winning games. But it feels like I always hear on the Solid Verbal, they talk about an LRO, a luck runs out sort of scenario. It feels like we've been waiting on that for a while now with TCU. Like, when is this going to stop? When is this going to stop? Texas feels like a bit of a buzzsaw right now. Game day is going to be in the house. Last time that happened, Texas played a really complete, focused game against Alabama and damn near won the thing. They're if you can get them focused and a night home game with game day in town and TCU, a team that has been, a thorn in their side, I would think that there is every reason in the world for Texas to be pretty motivated for this game, which makes them really tough to beat. But there is that bugaboo, second half Sark. Hashtag second half Sark. Get that trending if we're going to see it again on Saturday. Hashtag second half Sark. Are they going to blow it? This game to me has Texas with a big lead written all over it because that's what they do. They jump out to big leads. And what does TCU do? They dig big holes. TCU trailed by 17 against Oklahoma State, 18 against K-State, 4 in the fourth quarter against Tech, but they won all those games. Texas blew a 2-score lead at Oklahoma State. They blew a 2-score lead at Texas Tech. They tried as hard as they could to blow a 3-score lead in Manhattan last week. It's just kind of what they do. So this game seems built, totally primed and built for Texas to jump out to a big lead and then just try to hang on for dear life as TCU comes storming back in this game. So that'll be the tale to me. I'm not going to be bothered at all if early on you see Texas jumps out to a 17-0 lead or a 21-3 lead or something like that. I'm not going to be too fazed by that because that would be both teams just playing it right to what they've been so far this year, playing to their identity so far this season. One other note I want to mention on a Big 12 game before I get out of here. Actually, two. I've got something for you on Oklahoma State, Iowa State as well. But Kansas at Texas Tech, that was another one I was surprised to see Tech start out as I believe I saw like a 5-point favorite. Now I'm looking at the line, and it's Tech minus 3.5. Surprises me. And Tech is moving in a totally different direction than Kansas. Tech has lost 4 of 5, all by at least 9 points. Kansas got the win over Oklahoma State last week in pretty emphatic fashion to become bowl eligible. Maybe you could argue with me there, John. Are they really heading in the right direction if they have technically lost 3 of their last 4? Okay, fair, but they had a bye week and then an emphatic win over Oklahoma State. The interesting thing here to me will be who's playing quarterback. Kansas has kind of the K-State problem on their hands where it's, do you go with the hot hand backup in Jason Bean or do you bring Jalen Daniels back? Sounded like he was at least close or had an opportunity to play last week, but did not go. Now do you bring that back? Do you try and mess with the mojo here on the road when it's been a long time? I mean, that was a long time ago. College game day, that TCU game, that was the last time Jalen Daniels played. You try and throw him back out there, or do you just roll with Jason Bean? That's a very interesting conundrum. And then for Tech, no Baron Morton. Going to be Donovan Smith or Tyler Shuck. I don't love that for Texas Tech, although all 3 quarterbacks have had their ups and downs this year and had their moments. Baron Morton certainly was having some negative moments, but I wonder how much of that you could attribute to the injury for him. And he definitely, to me, has the highest upside of the 3. So I don't know. Tech, you guys know I'll be rooting for you. I mean, I would love to be wrong about this, but that feels like a wrong team favored kind of game to me. That Kansas should, especially, Kansas can play pretty free and loose now. They got the bowl eligibility thing off their back. I don't know. They're just so damn well coached. I don't know. That to me feels like Kansas would go down and get the win. But Tech, look, Cactus Nation, Cacti Nation. Please get it done for me. Cactus Mafia, Cacti Mafia. Get it done. Get the win. I would much appreciate that. But it's not what I'm expecting. Not what I'm expecting on Saturday. The Oklahoma State note that I wanted to give you, not really about the game, although how crazy is it that 2 weeks ago Oklahoma State was in the top 10. Now they're a 1-point underdog at home to Iowa State. That's how much injuries can really beat you up, especially when Spencer Sanders is a part of that. But I saw this quote this week from Mike Gundy. I was reading a little bit of his press conference recap where he was kind of getting grilled on questions about, and he had a nice little, kind of like, everybody wants to know what the hell's going on. We're going to be fine. It's okay. We're so used to winning. Like, you lose a couple of games, people start to freak out. But I did not like this quote from him. He was asked about the transfer portal, and he said, "We're not big portal people, and I'm never going to be a big portal guy. I'm going to believe in the guys on our team. I'm not saying I'm against it. I just don't believe in it. I just think you've got to raise the ones you have here. Now, if you get a massive number of injuries at a certain position, or if you have kids portal out on you, and then he trails off and says, which the portal is going to slow down. The portal is going to slow down. I'm going to guess there will be 80% less go into the portal this coming year than there were last year. So it's going to slow down big time. I don't know, man. I feel like the portal is here to stay. The portal is still going to be utilized a lot. And if you're especially a coach at a place that's not a traditional power, you're going to have to use that thing. You're going to have to work that thing and be really open to it. That threw up some warning signs to me. If I'm an Oklahoma State fan, like, I would really want our coach to be on the cutting edge of this and understanding the value of this and continuing to work it and use it as much as possible. Now, I'm not totally familiar with Oklahoma State in the portal and how much it has helped them or not since this really became a thing. But look, all the respect in the world for Gundy and the program that he runs. But that's one where if I'm thinking about the longevity of this program and this run and how long he's going to stick it out here, that's the type of thing I start my ears perk up a little bit. All right. Long tenured coach has been around for a long time. That feels to me like he's fighting the way that this thing is going. And I think the portal is just it's a key way to go. It's to me like the new junior college recruiting. Junior college recruiting was a great equalizer for Bill Snyder once upon a time when nobody was doing it and he was building the K-State program. I feel like the transfer portal, it's much more widely used, obviously, than the junior college ranks were, even at their most popular. But I think it's a similar thing in where it's like that's a way you can get an edge. That's a way you can help rebuild a roster. I get that you want to be a developmental program. And I think K-State is a pretty good example of developmental program. They're still developing their guys and keeping guys around, I think, at a better clip than a lot of schools. But they're still using the portal a lot too, and they very much embrace the portal and know that they have to use it. Oklahoma State fans, just get Mike Gundy right. Get Mike Gundy right. Get him back on track with the portal and understanding that that's going to be a pretty important thing, I think, for them moving forward in college football. And I definitely don't see it dropping off by 80%. That seems like a crazy high number. Alpha Cat. What's up, Alpha Cat? Thank you. Alpha Cat says, thanks again, John. Keep drinking that purple Tang. Yes. Hey, Jerome Tang got a win. It was 93-59, I believe, was the final over UTRGV in the first game of the Jerome Tang era on Monday. And my God, it was just a refreshing style of basketball up and down the floor. So much athleticism, great defense, things I think you could hang your hat on. There will be a moment where, this is not all unicorns and lollipops anymore in the love affair. At least hits like a moment where you're like, oh, okay, they just lost a game that they shouldn't have lost, something like that. But for right now, it's all smiles, and I'm loving watching those guys. And there were more highlights, I feel like, in that one game than there have been the entire last 3 years combined. Like, if you're filling up a highlight reel, you saw more out of that one game than we've seen in the last 3 years of K-State hoops. So I was loving it. K-State plays at Cal, by the way, on Friday. You guys will enjoy this. K-State plays at Cal on Friday. Guess what channel it's on? It's on the Pac-12 network. So I've got to figure out how to get a free trial of the Pac-12 network. And I believe I have it figured out that it's like Fubo TV or whatever. So I think and I've done a free trial with them before, I think, to get the Longhorn network. So I'm going to have to create like a new email address to get back into Fubo. Nobody tell them, please, that I'm trying to do this. But I'm going to have to figure out a way to get my free trial so I can watch the Pac-12 network on Friday, which seems very ironic in all of this, right? And a pretty appropriate place to end the live tonight, that your boy is going to have to scrounge up a way to watch the Pac-12 network this week. All right. Big 12 number 1 BYU. Looks like he'll be last in here. It says, first live session, go BYU, Big 12 champs 2023 and playoff. Love the energy. Love the optimism. Big 12 number 1 BYU. Thank you for being here. It's a great first contribution. Love it. Bringing the energy for BYU fans. Appreciate that. Noel coming in says, sad to see Jerome leave Baylor. Awesome coach and well-deserved head coach. Yes. Thank you, Noel. Thank you so much, you guys, for giving us Jerome Tang. I cannot thank you enough. The guy's recruiting like a madman. He's put together as good a roster as you possibly could when you only had 2 guys stick around from last year. Got Keontae Johnson, who was at one point first team all SEC and SEC preseason player of the year. Just really freaking ready to go. Put together an amazing coaching staff. I could go for days. I could go for days talking about everything I love about Jerome Tang. But I've got to go to a concert. So I'm going to try and figure out the Pac-12 network on Friday. Right now, I'm going to drive to Lawrence, Kansas to go see a concert. So lots of irony happening here, people. Please like the video. Please spread the word. If you got friends and family, social media, Facebook groups, fans of certain teams, fans of the league, there are people that like college football, like Big 12 football, like conference realignment. Please spread the word about the channel. Hit me up on Twitter at JL Kurtz. Pretty responsive in the DMs typically. So get after me there if you have something. And I think that's it. Oh, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you would like to support the channel and you missed being here live and you're just watching this after the fact, that is a way that you can support the channel as well. That's all for me, guys. Enjoy the weekend of Big 12 football. If something huge happens, I will talk to you then. If not, see you on Sunday. Take care.